recording and broadcast, and we're going to start. Here we go. Okay, everybody's good. Doors opened. Everybody's coming in. This is great. All right. Give everyone a couple of minutes. Good morning, everybody coming in. It's almost lunchtime. Almost a good afternoon. Good. I know, but no, hit the curb with my bumper and I drove on. All right. Good morning, everyone. It is 11 o'clock on the dot. So I want to welcome everybody in this morning. Thanks for you all joining us for our MMAP Cybersecurity Grant information session. This is a way for us to get this information out to a larger group of people at one time. We feel it's extremely valuable information, as I'm sure all of our speakers do as well that are on with us today. So we wanted to bring this group together. These are our subject matter experts that can speak to the grant and how it works. We have with us Lily Fitzgerald, who is with us she is from MassTech. So Lily will go over a little bit more of how it works on the MassTech side. John Sinopoli is with us from Synagex. John is going to talk and give you a little bit of examples of how some other companies are in the process and are able to use this type of a grant. And then our very own Lisa Oden, who is also with us this morning from MassMEP, and she'll give you pull it together as to how we are also involved in this and how the three of us work together to make this a successful program for all the manufacturers that are out there in the state of Massachusetts. So we just want to go over some housekeeping items. Obviously, you're all in a webinar session. So being that you're in the webinar session, you will be able to communicate with the presenters this morning through the chat and the Q&A button. We always recommend that if you have something specific that you would like to connect with one of the facilitators, go ahead and use the chat, and then you can reach out to them directly. More than likely, though, if you have a question in a group such as this large, around 30 people, your question is probably similar to somebody else's question. So we strongly encourage you to use the Q&A. It is also a great area for best practices for people to, maybe it's a question that they haven't been able to formulate yet, but if you have that question and you've been able to formulate it, you can pop it in there and we can all learn from that. So we strongly encourage you to use the Q&A today. We do have an hour set aside for this webinar. Each of our speakers will have a certain amount of time, but that does not mean that we will not be answering questions. We are going to hold off on the questions till the end of the presentation, just in case they do answer the questions throughout, but we will still keep the questions posted and we'll review them at the end in case somebody else maybe joins late and is not able to catch up on that question. So we'll get them caught up. And the last thing is you can see that we are recording this information session, and that is because we want it to be a resource for those of you out there, maybe some colleagues of yours that aren't able to jump into this, another company you may see could benefit from listening to this. So that's why we allow this to live, and thankfully, graciously from Synagex and also from MassTech with their approval, that it gets to sit on our YouTube page, and that you can then go in and watch this. So you will all receive a link at the end of this from a follow-up email that will provide that link to you so you can share it with anybody you know that may have interest in watching this session to learn more about the MMAP Cybersecurity Grant Program. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to my trusty colleague and subject matter expert, Lisa Derby Oden.
Good morning, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be with you here today. And even though I have the first spot, I really feel like it should be Lily that had the first spot here to talk really about the details of the program. However, I work for MassMEP. MassMEP partners with MassTech on a regular basis for not only the MMAP Cybersecurity Grant, but also the MMAP grant. And those funds do originate from MassTech. A lot of times people think that, MassMEP is giving these grants out, and I just want to clarify up front that that is not true, that we're a partner in the process. So Haley, if you'd like to go ahead and move it to the next slide, I just want to give everybody here a background about MassMEP so that you know a little bit more about us. We are a nonprofit, a standalone nonprofit organization that was started in 1996. There is an MEP center in every state and in Puerto Rico across the country. And originally, the MEP centers started out underneath the Department of Commerce, most specifically NIST, the National Institutes for Standards and Technology. And each of the MEP centers is supposed to address the needs of the manufacturing ecosystem within their state. So the way the MEP centers are organized can be very different. Like I said, we're a standalone nonprofit here. We're partly funded by NIST, partly funded by the state, and partly funded by fee for service. But for example, if you were to look at Indiana, Indiana is part of Purdue University. So that's just an example of how the centers can be organized differently. Here in Massachusetts, we are really dedicated to helping the small and mid-sized manufacturers in the state. That doesn't mean that we don't work with the big guys too, because we do, but our focus is really on the small and medium-sized companies. We really want to help manufacturing to remain a thriving part of the Massachusetts economy. So that means that we want to help you grow, and in order to do that, we provide a variety of different subject matter areas that include operational efficiency, workforce development, and innovative and profitable growth. We also have a variety of people on staff, our project managers and our business development advisors that have decades of manufacturing experience. So they've walked in the shoes of the manufacturer and they really get it. But we also have a number of partnerships with government, with business, and with academic institutions as well. And we like to leverage all of these and bring them to you as manufacturers as resources. We do have the 3 core areas of expertise, which are operational excellence, workforce strategies, and innovative growth strategies. In addition to that, my role here at MassMEP is I'm a grants manager, and so this is one area that I'm really familiar with. We do serve as a resource for helping companies to prepare their workforce training fund grants, their MMAP grants, and other grants as well. So we try to help everybody out with those things, because manufacturers aren't necessarily grant writers, but we are. So that's great. Next slide, Haley. So again, I want to just talk a little bit about our role in the cybersecurity grant. And again, these cybersecurity grants are offered by MassTech, and one of their requirements is that you partner with a nonprofit partner in order to submit your application. And there's really 2 reasons for that. They want the nonprofit partner to be the one that handles the grant administration, which includes all of the funds requests, the reporting, and that kind of thing. There is, the nonprofits can request an administration fee, and MassMEP does request 2.5% of the funds that you request, not of the project size, because your project size is going to be double what your funds request is usually because of the one-to-one match. But now I'm stealing Lily's thunder, so I'm going to stop with that right there. The other reason for the nonprofit partners is to help increase awareness of the whole manufacturing ecosystem in Massachusetts. Massachusetts has a lot of great things for manufacturers, and a lot of manufacturers aren't aware of them all. And so by partnering with the nonprofits, this helps to achieve that. I'm also going to say that as a nonprofit partner, besides the 2.5% administration fee on this grant, that we also will do a supply chain assessment with you. That assessment is done at no additional cost. And then I want to talk a little bit about the cybersecurity assessment, which is, now I'm stealing John's thunder. All right, you need to have a third-party cybersecurity assessment conducted that you submit with the application. And there are two different ways that you could pay for that assessment, depending on the size of your company. If you are 100 or fewer employees, you can apply for a Workforce Training Fund Express grant to cover that cost. The caveat to that is if you do that, you cannot use that assessment cost as match, as part of your one-to-one cost share for the grant, because it's state funding. So you cannot match a state grant with state funds. However, if you pay for that assessment with cash, you can use that as one-to-one match for your grant. So I think from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, John Sinopoli with Synagex.
All right. Thank you for that, Lisa. You absolutely, you can steal thunder anytime you'd like. You're far more educated in this space than I am. But I appreciate the heads up. So just a quick introduction. So Synagex, two different lenses in regard to this process, right? So for one, we partner very closely with MassMEP to conduct CMMC gap assessment as a cyber AB registered practitioner organization. So in short, we do these gap assessments for many clients in Massachusetts and across the country. Another lens that we have, we are also a managed service security provider, which gives us a sort of different picture on how folks are looking at the grant opportunity and the process, right? So all I'm hoping to do today is to kind of walk you through what we see, kind of give you a ground up perspective. But you know, Lily and Lisa, certainly the subject matter experts here today. If you don't mind, next slide, Haley. Okay, so from our perspective, we sort of see, you know, maybe three paths with our clients as they're looking to potentially leverage this grant to remediate some CMMC gaps. So simply, you know, we run into clients out there who have either never done a self assessment or have never done a gap assessment, and so that's a pretty traditional path. You know, we talk to a lot of folks, a lot of manufacturers in Massachusetts about doing the gap assessment and the value of it. That process typically takes, you know, from inception to end of assessment, it's typically about a 30 to 45 day process, right? And again, that's for folks who have never had one done before. Within the last year, if folks have conducted that assessment with MassMEP, that puts us in a place where we meet the assessment eligibility to start the process for the grant application. If that process was completed prior to 2023, it's a slightly different process, right? And Lisa, Lily, please stop me if I say anything wrong, but my understanding is that assessment has to have been done within the last year.
Yeah, that's correct.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have you on this call today. So anybody who's done that with us within the last year or with another firm, doesn't have had to have been with us, is eligible, right, from that perspective to move forward with the grant application. Now, there's also a subset of folks, you know, we've been doing gap assessment with MassMEP for a number of years, and there are a subset of folks who have conducted that assessment prior to 2023, which would require an additional step if assessment hasn't been done, or a refresh of that assessment hasn't been done in the last year. Good news is that MassMEP has published a second course in the Express Grant process that is a condensed version of this assessment. It does require that prior full assessment will have had been done in the prior 3 years, so that there's a base to work from, but there is a accelerated version of that refresher that would meet the eligibility requirements for the grant application that is available through MassMEP and the Express Grant catalog. So that refresher assessment is much faster, right? That process is about a 5 to 7 day process once it's started. And really, in thinking about that, it's a look at the work that has been done, prior to. It is a quick refresh and supporting information and any changes in the environment that would give us a fresh look at where those gaps are today, right? Which is also another part of this grant application. We need to know what gaps exists and what eligible items, right, can fill the grant application. And I know Lily's going to touch on that a little bit later, so I won't spend too much time talking about those things. Next slide, please. Okay, so I thought it might make some sense to just come up with some practical, some examples that we've seen out there, just to see, I guess just to make some real world sense out of how some others are approaching the grant application. This example is a contract manufacturer, that had a large existing customer, right? So had done some work for their customer, but couldn't really fill larger orders due to a lack of cyber compliance, getting a little pressure from their customer to close some of those gaps before larger orders could come flowing through the business. This customer had conducted a traditional gap assessment with MassMEP in 2023. So they had all the artifacts they had needed to do business in the space. Obviously, the score was a little low for the prime to start to flow some of that business through. This particular customer had signed a contract with an MSP to begin some of the remediation efforts before the grant was announced, right? So really started to do what they could to strategically address some of those gaps, and focusing on some of the more heavily weighted things within the assessment, right? So one of the key things that we see out there is that customers and the DoD are looking to the SPRS score as sort of a key marker to identify where we are in the CMMC compliance journey. And so a very common thing to do is to try to attack some of the things that are weighted in that scale with higher points to raise the SPRS score. And there are things in there that aren't necessarily hardware related, right? So this customer really focused their effort on those items. Good news is, MassTech announced this grant opportunity, and obviously there are items on that list that also are things like hardware, right? So in this case, servers, some networking, some IT equipment that were required to be refreshed, and some cameras. And so they were in a very good position to fill out the grant application to meet those requirements with what is eligible for grant application, because they had done a lot of that work in the right time frame and had a lot of those items on the ready. So filling out the grant application and this is a really good story actually, plan to republish their passing SPRS score this year with the combination of the work they've done on their own and this grant opportunity. So this one's a pretty good story. Next one, please. Okay. So slightly different path here. Parts manufacturer. So in this case, in the prior example, it was an existing customer with some business growth at risk. this particular example was a business that really didn't do a lot of space in the defense industrial base, had an opportunity to work with a prime, a new customer, but met that barrier as far as compliance was concerned pretty quickly in the process, right? Prime was not really willing to take on new supplier unless compliance was in a much better place. They had conducted a gap assessment back in 2022 in preparation for some of this business. So they had a sense, that things were lacking there a little bit way back when. But now things are accelerating with this prime. So they signed an MSP contract with an RPO, began some of those remediation efforts. Again, just focusing on some of those more heavily weighted items that were not hardware specific to try to make sure that they could move that process along with this customer and start to remediate some of that compliance risk. They began doing some business with the new customer. They fortunately were able to get to the point with that customer where they could convince their supply chain management that the risk was not as high as they thought. We should be able to do some small business here. We have the POAM, the SSP, our SPRS score, and we have somebody we're working with to get there, but we're not quite there. So they were in a place with that where they had a list of hardware, and in this case, server, networking, cameras. I missed the bullet here, but they're in a position where they have to do a refresh assessment because even though they had a good sense for what they needed based on 2022, they hadn't done an assessment since then. So conducting that refresh assessment, making sure that the needs for hardware, networking, cameras still exist, or the priorities are appropriate. 5 to 7 day refresh assessment, then moving forward with the grant application, and obviously moving ahead, continuing to make sure that that score is moving forward and that their business with this large new customer isn't jeopardized. So slightly different, mostly because the effort in 2022, but I think the approach is pretty similar in this example. Next one is very different. So in this case, vehicle parts manufacturer. Business was doing some work in the defense industrial base. And they had conducted a traditional CMMC gap assessment in 2021. This manufacturer kind of took the slower road. I think the lens here was that compliance is out there, but we've dealt with this before. And we kind of know that this is going to take a little longer to get to full force. We don't have a ton of work in the defense industrial base, so let's take the slow road. Really made some modest remediation efforts, mostly just some IT refresh sort of switches, maybe computers here and there. Business sort of changed, the pace changed for them a little bit. And so in this case, they're hoping that they can do more work in the defense industrial base, even though right now that's not a huge opportunity for them. But because they did that gap assessment in 2021, they only have to worry about doing the refresh assessment in 2024. And hopefully with that grant application and that refreshed assessment, start to do some of the things that could be a little more costly on the hardware side around access control of the facility and cameras. They had already made some investment in IT, so they were feeling pretty good about that and their path on the journey to compliance. And they had held off some of the investment on surveillance and access control because the cost was just too much for them. So with the refresh assessment and the possibility of this grant, are able to really focus on some of those more hardware items that are a little expensive. So grant application and plan to begin working with an MSP in 2024, now that they know that they can publish a better score and start to deepen their work in the defense industrial base. So 3 slightly different examples of what we've seen out there. Obviously, everyone's individual journey is a little different, but hopefully that just hopefully that resonated with some folks on the call as examples of how you might be able to get going with this grant application. And from here, I believe, Haley, I'm handing it back to you if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, you
All
are.
right.
Yeah. So thank you, John. Appreciate that. Before I introduce, obviously, the most important, I'm gonna say the most important person in the room that everybody's really in here to listen to. I will turn it over to Lily Fitzgerald. And Lily is, I'm going to make sure I get this right. Lily is a senior manager for the advanced technology programs with MassTech. And the reason that MassMEP did this webinar is for an informational purposes. So when we put this together, you do not have to, as Lily did answer, that this is a program that does not mandate any specific nonprofit partner or third-party assessment provider. We are one of many, which Lisa and Lily both can confirm, nonprofit partners that exist. We just felt it was our responsibility as a manufacturing extension partnership to put on an information session such as this to provide this information for all the Massachusetts manufacturers that we work with, because we do get these questions. And it is important for the manufacturers to know that programs like this exist for them due to where we are in the state of the economy today and what we've been through in the past years, and that these opportunities are being put out there. And so we feel it is our responsibility, and with our partnership with Synagex, because we do a lot of work with Synagex, which is why we asked them as a partner to come in and present on this, and with our partnership, as Lisa explained in her session at the beginning, with MassTech. And that's where this is coming from. So hopefully when Lily starts to go through the MassTech collaborative side of how the MMAP process works, specifically for this grant that we're speaking to today, maybe this will make a little bit more sense for some of you that are not quite sure, where the scope of this webinar was set for. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Lily, and you can kind of wrap all this up in a pretty little bow, and hopefully we can smooth all the surfaces.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Haley. And thanks for this invitation. And yeah, I, as the grant manager for this program, I'm very happy to promote this program wherever. So for other folks who, might be partners of different kinds, if you're interested in having a conversation about promoting it for other communities in Massachusetts that you access, feel free to reach out to me. My email is fitzgerald@masstech.org. And I'll put that in the chat so that you have that as well. So, and thanks, Haley and Lisa and John for introing a bit about MassTech. But so MassTech Collaborative is a Massachusetts economic development agency. We strengthen the competitiveness of the tech and innovation economy of this state. We make investments, we enable partnerships and drive insights, ultimately harnessing and growing the talent of Massachusetts for the tech and innovation economy. In the next 2 fiscal years, we're going to give out about $500 million, and most of these are state dollars. And so very relevant to this program and to all of our programs is that we are distributing state taxpayer dollars. And so we are, of course, very careful and mindful about that and try to enable benefits that we think are broadly beneficial for the overall state's ecosystem and ultimately back to the taxpayers. And then we also win federal grants that we use to bolster our state budget line item. So just to kind of clarify who we are as a state agency, we have 6 different divisions that focus on different parts of the innovation economy. I am from the Center for Advanced Manufacturing. That's where this program comes out of. We focus on manufacturing. You'll hear all about us in a minute. We have other divisions that focus on other parts. The Innovation Institute is more on R&D, broadband and cyber divisions focus on supporting municipalities in the state as they obtain more internet access for their communities and bolster their cyber infrastructure. We have a whole institute dedicated to e-health development and initiatives. And then we have a new division focused on microelectronics because we led a successful bid for some microelectronics commons funding, which is one of the biggest batches of chip CHIPS dollars that has come out. And so MassTech led that. And so now we run a whole division related to supporting the microelectronics hub for the Northeast. And so Haley, you can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, this program specifically is out of the Center for Advanced Manufacturing, or CAM, at MassTech. And we want to make sure that we can grow, innovate, and maybe most importantly, or just as importantly, make in the state of Massachusetts. So the way that we do that, Haley, if you could go to the next, we have 3 pillars that we focus on. First, innovation. So we want to support innovation both around new manufacturing technologies to help make sure that manufacturing can keep getting more and more efficient and sustainable and impactful and precise, as well as making sure that physical goods that are invented in Massachusetts, we want to make sure that they can be made here. And we have a whole grant program called M2I2 that's dedicated to that. If you're interested in that, I manage that grant program and would be happy to chat. Second, and this pillar is where this particular program comes out of, we're trying to focus on supporting the supply chain of Massachusetts by supporting small and medium manufacturers as they adopt new technologies and trends, things like progressing towards Industry 4.0, bolstering your cybersecurity credentials, and automating and kind of just overall adapting. Last and certainly not least, what we hear is really the most consistent top issue from manufacturers is workforce access. And so we have a whole slew of activities related to helping grow the manufacturing workforce in the state. And if you're interested in that, again, reach out to me. We have a lot that we can share on that front too. Okay, Haley, you can go forward. Thank you. Okay, so there's about this manufacturing cybersecurity program. We launched this in December. I want to say upfront, we did try very hard to make this program simple and accessible because we know that there's really this urgent need. We've heard repeatedly how top of mind this tends to be for manufacturers in the state, both the primes and small and medium manufacturers who support them inside and outside of the defense industry, I should say. Both pressure, of course, if you work for the DoD in any way down the chain, you hear a lot about this, but we also hear this from folks who are not involved in defense at all, and just their private sector customers are asking for them to bolster their cybersecurity equipment. And so we created this in December, and we tried to make it easy. And so hopefully that will come across here. So the 4 things that I'm going to try to make sure that you know about this program, previewing on this slide. The first is that this is for grants for up to $30,000 for cybersecurity capital equipment. So I'll go through what that means on the next slide, but the who this is for is Massachusetts. These are taxpayer dollars. You got to be in the state of Massachusetts. Small and medium manufacturing companies pursuing standards like CMMC, but it doesn't have to be CMMC. It can be SOC 2, ISO 27001, other mappable equivalent cybersecurity frameworks. So you need to kind of be working towards something specific in the cybersecurity space. Third is you do have to have a nonprofit partner. This is why MassMEP is so interested in this, and they've been a great partner on other grants of ours. And lastly, as Lisa mentioned, you do have to have a one-to-one match, and so I'll go through what that means in more detail. So those are the 4 items. So yes, first, what can we support you with? So cybersecurity capital equipment, this means that it has to be capital on your books. It cannot be something that is considered an operational expense. And it has to be specifically equipment. So, the best examples we have for this are badge readers, cameras, servers, network switches, security appliances like firewalls. I had a question recently and we double checked if a computer is needed, a new computer is needed for your pursuit of a standard, and it will be capital on your books, then it can be eligible here. What this doesn't include very critically is software. We realize that software is a major expense that goes into updating your cybersecurity. These dollars from the legislature are specifically capital, and so we cannot fund operational expenditures, which software often is. And so software is not included, unfortunately, but we're hopeful that the up to 30K in the physical equipment is still beneficial. Thanks, Haley. So next, as I mentioned, you have to be a small or medium manufacturer who is pursuing a cybersecurity standard. And the way that you can help illustrate that to us, that is what you are doing, is conducting a third-party cybersecurity assessment within the last 12 months. As John referenced, we say on our website, you can do a refresh. You do not have to do like the full thing over again. But we need to make sure that these expenses that we're using taxpayer dollars to buy are going towards something that is clearly going to help you on this standard. And what we mean by third party is that it has to be basically conducted by someone. It cannot be your internal IT department, but you can use a third-party provider, or you can use a third-party self-assessment tool. Both of those are allowable in this case. And if you do incur any fees to complete that assessment, you can count that towards your cost share. Lisa referenced, this cannot, unless you're using state dollars, which I'll get into in a minute, but if you are using your own dollars to pay for an assessment, you can get that counted towards your cost share. So, okay, 3rd out of 4. So we're going through it. We try to make it easy. Hopefully this is making sense so far. The nonprofit partners. So this tends to be true across MassTech's programs, but we do require a partnership between our applicants and a nonprofit partner. And so a nonprofit partner in this case means any institution of higher education, a nonprofit entity, or public or quasi-public entities that are legally organized in Massachusetts. We have examples here from MMAP. I should have mentioned MMAP is like a few-year-old program that is more general, and it's up to $200K for helping manufacturers in the state progress towards Industry 4.0. If you don't already know about MMAP and you have questions, also feel free to reach out to us. We actually have a round of this open right now. And so this program is kind of this manufacturing cybersecurity program is a spin out of this that we made to meet this kind of specific need. But so I have examples from MMAP because that program has been around for a few years, whereas this one is just brand new. But so MassMEP has been a very frequent partner for MMAP, as has Berkshire Innovation Center for those out in the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts. The Mass Hire Centers can be great partners on this. Local economic development agencies, there's lots of organizations in Greater Boston that you can consider. And I think Lisa mentioned this, but there's a couple of reasons for this. One is that we have to, as a state entity, we actually have to sign contracts with nonprofits and not with for-profit entities. So the partner does provide a service where they submit your invoices to us on your behalf, and then we pay them and they pay you. So there's kind of a contractual element. But more importantly, we think that these organizations have a lot of value to offer you as a manufacturer, and helping you get better connected to other resources in the state and into an ecosystem of organizations, other manufacturers who have been through this and maybe are further along in the process. And we believe very strongly at MassTech in the value of that kind of partnership. And so this has twofold. Lastly, okay, one-to-one cost share. So what does this mean? You can request up to $30,000, whatever amount that you are requesting. You need to illustrate us that you are investing an equal or greater amount in that same project. And so really the philosophy here is actually that I like to say someone other than the taxpayers of Massachusetts needs to be sharing the cost burden of this project. And so that's why this cannot come from other state dollars. But if you happen to have a federal grant that you can use towards these kinds of expenses, you are welcome to do so. Private dollars, your revenue, or certainly you can use that kind of dollar and count that towards your match. Anything that you spend that is related to this project can count as your match. So it could be either capital or operational expenditures. You could buy, maybe you actually need to buy $60,000 worth of equipment. And so you can ask MassTech to pay for half, and then you can pay for the other half. Software, we know, is going to be a massive line item for anyone who is pursuing any of these items. So that can count towards your match. We also realize that you're going to have a lot of workforce training related expenses that you can also count. So we hope that manufacturers can piece this together in one of a few different ways. And as I mentioned, the fees from the cybersecurity assessment can count towards your match. And also, if you work with a nonprofit partner, many of them will charge you some kind of a fee. As Lisa mentioned, there was at the beginning of this, and anything that you are paying them can count towards your match as long as you're not using state dollars. And then lastly, the match has to occur within the same year that the project happened. Like basically, we can't pay you $30,000 and then you say you're going to invest $30,000 over the next 10 years. Like we need to see that this is kind of co-invested at the same time. Those are my only slides. So happy to, Haley, like kick it back to you. I see there's some, yeah, I see one question just off the bat that I see. Software. So software is excluded from what we can reimburse you for. It is included in what you can count towards your match, like illustrating that you are investing an equal amount. So hopefully that answers your question, Mary. But feel free to do a follow up.
And then how about next question? I think that's probably you, Lily, more with the how it falls, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if everybody can see these. So Nick asked, as mass-based businesses with a smaller site in Connecticut, could capital items to be installed at Connecticut site go into the grant?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is our equipment grants, like they have to stay in the state of Massachusetts. So if you have needs at your Massachusetts site, that's fine. You don't have to necessarily be headquartered in Massachusetts. Also, for other folks who might be on the line, you just have to have like a significant manufacturing base here. But yeah, specifically for next question, unfortunately, even though you're a company that's based in Massachusetts, the equipment can't go to other states.
So just in general for something like that, Lily or Lisa, maybe you might know, if somebody is on here from a different state, any idea if any of these similar programs run in any other states that you know of?
That is a good question. Lisa, interrupt me if you know faster than me. I did look this up at one point. I believe Connecticut actually does have a program. I'm going to try to find my notes on this. And I want to say Virginia or Maryland. It's a really good question. But I believe at the very least, we tried to make this best in class, and it was larger than any of the other grants that we found. What a good question. I don't know, Lisa, anything else you might know on that?
I'm not familiar, so I'm sorry, I can't help on that one.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I would just say for us, we would just say, obviously, like Lisa said, there's an MEP in every state. Right. They're going to be the ones that are going to know as well, because if it is a similar program or process where it's a nonprofit, then they would be the ones that would have more insight into it as well.
Yeah. And to Nick's question, I'm almost positive that Connecticut is one of the states that has it. So I would say ask your MEP there, and you might be able to just find it online, but I think that they have a similar one.
Good. There's two more questions in here. John, I think you probably would be better to answer. I think you answering these. So the first question that came in, we completed a self-assessment and had a gap assessment in 21 and published a very low score. We have not any assessments since. We've done extensive work moving to GCC high and purchasing servers and other hardware. We have a way to go. Where would we fall with the assessment process?
Good question, and good work. It sounds like a lot of work's been done. I would say, based on that, it would depend on if the gap assessment was conducted by an RPO. If a gap assessment was conducted by an RPO in 2021, it would qualify for the refresher assessment to meet the grant requirement. If it was not, then we probably have to start with a fresh assessment with an RPO.
Okay, and then also from the same, so Kristen actually has a couple follow-ups. So they're a small business and they're a subcontractor for a DoD, and then also just noted it was conducted by an MSP they had hired.
Yeah, I would ask if that MSP is a cyber AB registered practitioner organization. If they were, then it would be okay for the refresher. But if not, would have to have been done by an RPO.
Okay. All right, Lily, I think this one's going to come kick back over to you. What are the restrictions
Yeah.
on the funding, such as must be used within a particular period of time, validity period, et cetera?
Yeah, so all funds should be drawn within 12 months of the award. So this is a rolling application. We're accepting currently applications through the end of our fiscal year, which is the end of June for the state of Massachusetts. So you can apply anytime between now and then. So whenever you receive an award, you have 12 months to draw down those funds. So, and I think it must be used within a validity period. Yeah, I'm trying, I don't know, Allison, did I answer your question? Particular use of time validity period. I mean, I guess in certain cases we do say, okay, great, thanks, Allison.
Yeah,
We
you
do say
did.
that like, if it's multiple fiscal years, we can sometimes accommodate that if it is properly indicated in the application, but we expect that with a grant of this size, it is largely going to be within one year.
Yeah.
And I should mention, this is an important link I'm going to put in the chat. This is to our solicitation page. It links to a question and answer, as well as the actual solicitation itself. So if you want full details, you can find those there. And if you have Q&A, you can submit them to proposals@masstech.org, and then we add them to the Q&A over time. It's very helpful for folks to ask questions that way. But yeah, that's where you can find additional information as well.
Yeah, that's the best place for them to go for any of those other questions. And if they are interested potentially in the M2I2 or anything else, you would direct them there as well, Lily?
Yeah, actually, let me put in a secondary. You can get there that way, but let me give you the more general CAM. The more general CAM website here is so that's where you link to like MMAP. Again, that's the kind of like larger Industry 4.0 automation 200K award for manufacturers. If you haven't heard of that program, it's fantastic. Also tried to make that the team tried to make that as easy as possible. And there's a round open right now, and that links to M2I2. Yeah. Is the grant only RPO?
No, as long as it was done by a cyber AB certified practitioners, that's okay as well.
All right. Cool. All right. Good. Okay, so I did, you can see from the last screen, we do have each of our panelists' information. It does, if you scan the QR code, this would be the time, if you were in high school today, they would say, oh, you can take your cell phones out. So as, you know, you can pull your cell phones out. If you scan the QR code, it does take you to each of our speakers' LinkedIn pages, and you can reach out to them there as well. So if you do want to follow up more, you know, with Lily or Lisa or John, you know, directly, please feel free to scan that and connect with them, and hopefully they can give you more information. You can always reach out to us as well at MassMEP. It's just massmep.org. We have a contact us page if, you know, you just want to connect through us. And that, so probably very similar to, you know, like what, it's just a resource is really what we are, you know, like with Lily giving you that information in the chat for you to see that. It's the same thing for MassMEP and what we can help and offer. And that's what we do. So we have the same goal, initiative, and result that we want to get to. And that is obviously keeping it here in Massachusetts, making it in Massachusetts. And if this is one of those resources that allows us to help manufacturers do that, then that's where we feel we need to have a responsibility, and that's why we bring this forward to everybody. So hopefully this has been beneficial for everybody. And if you have any further questions, we can stick around for a couple more minutes, and then we'll let everybody get to lunch 13 minutes earlier. As we always say, we won't tell anybody that you were let go a little bit earlier than the 12 o'clock deadline on this meeting. So nobody will know. You'll get some quiet time, answer some emails, maybe get something knocked out in the next 13 minutes without anybody knowing or being the wiser of it. So thanks everybody for being in here with us today. And please look for this on our YouTube page. And if you have anybody that would be interested in following and watching this again. Otherwise, we hopefully will see you soon, and best of luck to everybody that goes through the application process. So good luck to everyone.